definitely focus on what you're going to see the most, what is going to have the most bang for your buck, something that is, if it's something that the character handles in multiple scenes, then that you can spend extra there to have that have more personality. It can tell more of a story. You can get into the fine details of it.
Welcome back to the Media Boat Podcast, where we talk all things content creation. So no matter if you're filming with your phone or you're shooting on a big budget cinema camera, we're here to provide practical knowledge for the next time that you press record. Today we've got a very special episode, and we're going to dive into art and production and all the beautiful things that go on in the background that make a scene feel real. And we've got the amazing Kelly Dunnigan here today with us. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for coming out. We're really excited to have you and talk about something we haven't had anybody talk about this side of filmmaking before. So I'm excited to dive into what you do and go there.
Yeah, happy to. I think art is a often overlooked, or you want to film things the way that they are. So I think the mindset often is we're just going to go and get it raw and as it is, and kind of miss an opportunity sometimes to add an extra layer. So definitely excited to talk about it.
And I mean, I appreciate you and your group of people that do the art stuff so much more now. We got to work together. We'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But yeah, what you do elevates the project like way more than any lens or things that you can do. It really makes the world feel real. But first thing I got for you, how did you get into filmmaking? When did you say, man, I love doing this. I love, doing things hands-on?
It's kind of a silly story, but it is the truth. So I'm going to own my truth. When I was in high school, it was a big Twilight era. Everybody was obsessed, really resisted, finally saw the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't been really into fantasy films, or I was really mostly interested in music at that time. And then I saw this whole different world that they made, and that really sparked my interest in reading. And the whole time I'm reading all these books, I'm just picturing what that would look like if it was given the same treatment, brought to life. And so I started storyboarding, and I didn't know that that's what I was doing at the time. I was just drawing, but in sequence. And then it came time to apply for college, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was like, well, I'll look into filmmaking. And then kind of throughout college fell more and more in love with the process that I really didn't know anything about. So
yeah, it's funny. Everybody kind of has that key moment. So it's something that you kind of did, and then you were like, oh, is this for me? But when did you know, I think I'm going to do this, I don't know, forever. Maybe it might not be forever for you, but when did you know, I'm pursuing this, seriously?
I knew that I really wanted to pursue, I think specifically art department and production design, when part of production club, everybody wants to be behind the camera and with the lights and all of that. And we had a short spot of people lacking in the art department. And I went to one of our meetings just to see if there was anything that I could do, try something that we didn't have a whole lot of classes for. And they had a whole laundry list of things that they needed, and they didn't know how we were going to get it. They had the script was dressing a mansion size house. So they just needed a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
And I start, checking off all the things that I have. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is going to be a logistics problem, but I love solving problems. And I had all this stuff. So I was like, this is my opportunity. I can save production right now. And then just kind of fell in love with that process, being able to, look behind the camera and still have a say in what they're showing, and then that just kind of kept happening on other projects. You really get into the logistics of it too, because I need to know how much space we're dealing with, where the camera's looking. I need to know kind of like a producer's eye view of everything for
Right.
me to really do what I do well. And fell in love with that, like that whole process. Mostly in production club, and then I don't think it was like a particular moment other than realizing, like, I think they gave out awards at the end of that year, and I got an award for a freshman with the most stuff. And I was like, oh, finally somebody doesn't call it hoarding. They're like, thank God you have all of this stuff.
Yeah, it's comes clutch when you're like, hey, do you have this? And you're like, yes. I gotta
Weirdly, I do.
find it. So what drew you towards, I guess you kind of answered this, art department? Like, it seems like it kind of happened, because you guys needed someone. But after that, when you started kind of, like, what was the things about it that made you, like, feel like I love this and I love sourcing this? Was it part of the materials? Just kind of like what was that?
I've always had, um, I partially think it's genetic. I joke. I've literally always been called a hoarder since I was very young, because I just like stuff. Stuff is precious. Every item has a story.
Mhm.
And like, it's funny because I didn't notice it when I was a kid, but now I'm very aware of the fact that, like, all of the decorations in my parents' house are antiques that they got from their grandma or their great grandma, and talked to my grandma about how she inherited all of these like antique 150-year-old dough waiters that are just like a cool piece that I always would say, oh, that's really awesome. She inherited that from her grandma. So I've just kind of always had an appreciation for stuff and been surrounded by that, and had like these curated spaces that
Yeah.
I didn't realize. And yeah, so I've always
Always kinda
loved,
that
always
stuff.
loved seeing that, and always collected myself. And then yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like, I don't know, for me, I always enjoy having stuff, and the older I get, and I realize, like, what stuff's useful and what stuff's not, more of just like something I'm holding on to, which has been, I've tried to go the minimal route a little bit more, which is probably the opposite of way you have to think, right? You got to kind of like build out everything there. Let me just ask you this. When you're on a project for the first time, or you're finally being involved in a project, what's your process with, maybe working with the creative team or the director? Like, what's the first step for you, and things that you kind of need to know so that you can kind of get down the
Um Realistically, I always want to see the script. I know
Mhm.
that that's usually kind of under lock and key, but at least the broad strokes.
Mhm.
Especially, I mean, it's a not fun conversation you always have to bring up, but one of the most important things is what budget they're looking at,
Mhm.
and that compared to the script. So I'll ask, you know, they're like, "When are you available? This is kind of the idea." And I'm like, "That's interesting. I love the idea. But I need to know like the logistics of
Mhm.
how you're planning on seeing that, so that I can, is there going to be a lot of room for me to kind of hide things, or are you planning on shooting this 360? You want to see every single angle. You want to
Mhm.
be able to just like pick up and move, because then I have to design more of a space
Right,
than
right.
just like a corner in a blank room." So,
Yeah, that's you're on a project that we got to work together on. Dreams Feel Greatness is may or may not be out by the time this comes out. And we had a lot of those conversations early, and it was a good learning experience for me as well, directing, because knowing exactly what art department will need for a situation like that. And I think, luckily you were cool about it, but I had to kind of re-explain because I might not have had some of those things for you out of the gate. And we didn't really have a script for it, but we had like a more of a breakdown kind of thing,
Yeah.
a synopsis more so. But yeah, I feel like it's hard sometimes to fill in the blanks. And I think that's kind of your job. It's like, well, what's part of the scene in the script that's not really in the script, right? And that's kind of where your next steps, right?
Yeah, so I like to get the script or wherever the project is at that point and give like a rough estimate of how much I think that is going to be able to, like, how much that would cost. And then once we've kind of got the nitty-gritty stuff down, then go back in and explore, is it going to be time period? Is it going to be set in a different time period? Is that an element that we can play with?
Mhm.
Is color a big part? Can we tell a story through like little touches of color here and there? This character can be like this color, or you know, um in just like the shirts that they wear or the way that they stack their books, like what other places can we tell the rest of the story? And
Right.
sometimes that changes some things, but really I try to enhance and like try to find where we can enhance the story with
Yeah.
a little touch of art here and there.
Yeah. And then you put together some mood boards for our project. And
Cool.
I think that was super beneficial for me as well to see what we're kind of going for and what your brain was kind of thinking too. It's, that because that conversation, for me, I want to just like let you do your thing. And I think that was cool to see kind of have an idea of where it was going and what it turned into. Um, with mood boards, why is that key for you to kind of get everything together?
It kind of helps paint the final picture before you see it. Film is so visual, and my eye might see a scene completely different from yours, completely different from the DP. There's so many people that are involved that we're all trying to be on the same place. So I find it very helpful I really need to work on my 3D software rendering. That would be very helpful. If I have time, I like to sketch out like how I see the actual location versus just it's sorry. It's one thing that I didn't get to do, but I like to do if I have the time in the process to um sketch out how a room is actually going to look.
Hmm.
And um because it lets people live there. They can see, like, we had a lighting gag that we wanted to play with
Hmm.
as like a visual cue for another moment, and other people being able to see that can help them plan for it. Maybe, we'll spark an idea that they want to try and throw in, and so that we're all on the same place and kind of coming to the table with
Yeah.
all the same information. But as uh I have found, the more in advance you can think about it, the more time you have to play.
Hmm.
Like the more planned out it is, then you leave yourself all this free time that we're just like, "Oh, let's try this." Like, I wouldn't have
Yeah.
thought about that, but it's like a perfect moment and it's right here. Let's do it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Let's talk a little bit about color and color theory, maybe. We don't have to get super into the minutia of it, but how does color play a role in how you're selecting or coming up with different props? Let's say, for instance.
Um I have always, like, color theory is there. Colors have moods that are they typically get associated with. I like to play with them a little bit more than
Hmm.
um how they would typically be used, I guess. I don't always like putting, the evil character in black and
Yeah.
the
Right.
evil character in red. I don't know. But if we do have a color story like on um for example, when I was filming my senior Let the Road Take You, I wanted to show two very different characters, very different color stories on complete opposite ends of the spectrum. Blue and grays and cooler tones and orange and yellow and bright and happy warm tones. And kind of as it progresses, you see them get closer and closer and start to take on traits of each other and try to understand each other's perspective more, so that at the last shot, they're basically wearing the same clothes, just different takes on it. They're in the same, still their own personality, but in kind of like a mirror of each other, to show how close that they've gotten at the end. So I'll usually try to use the color that we've chosen to hint at that story. Like, yeah, it's just like little hints there, here and there, unless the whole point is to kind of knock you over the head with it.
Right.
Like commercials is pretty easy. Brands usually like brand awareness by showing their colors. So.
Are kind of is kind of easy to kind of go with that, and you kind of get pinched into a wall there. Textures. We talked a little bit about textures within the wardrobes and just even in the locations. How does that play, and what do you look for when you're selecting different wardrobe pieces, or you're selecting different furniture pieces, maybe, I think, when you're going about that?
I think that is the experience that I've had with that is I typically lean into more texture to add warmth. It's kind of similar to color theory, like furs give a sense of warmth, and natural fiber you wouldn't put in a CEO, like an uptight CEO's office. So I mostly pay attention to texture in I mostly pay attention to texture in telling like a character's personality more so. Harsh edges for somebody who's very angular, or that kind of stuff. I think it's pretty similar to color.
So within that vein, if you have a villain, for instance, what are you kind of looking for? Let's call it texture-wise. What are some things that you can help if we just took a picture of them without even explaining anything to make them look more villainistic or whatever?
Definitely the harsh angles, monochrome. I wouldn't put a lot of like color there in general. Glass, very like water would roll off of it. Not like they wouldn't have like a speckled wall. It would be partially painted in large domineering furniture, probably lots of dark colors, things that cast harsh shadows.
Yeah, see, I like that. I think that's a good, for our listeners or our viewers, they can kind of visualize what that looks like and kind of tie it into something they may see. Now, if you have a hero character, what are some things that maybe the hero or the main happy person of the film, what are some things that you might do to kind of have them stand out and be able to tell that story?
Typically with a hero character, I would find I don't know why I'm so attracted to jackets, but like a really awesome jacket, like on Dreams, that awesome like bomber that just had so much story in and of itself that you're already picturing like what the rest of their life led up to that moment.
That jacket was I was so jealous that it was a kid size. I wanted that for me.
I know.
It was so dope.
I have way too many jackets as it is.
Yeah, but it's like certain wardrobe pieces can like tell a story of their life, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
I think those standout pieces is a good way to say it. Something that is unique and special that they would have, that they have a couple extra details, something that kind of follows them throughout, like, because everybody has comfort items. So I think it humanizes them to have those special items.
For
And
me, I feel like it was I had like a Carolina Panthers starter jacket when I was like real little, and it kind of informed my future fashion decisions going forward for a long time. I feel like those pieces
I think
makes
throughout
you
my
think about.
life, I have owned probably 300 pairs of black combat boots. I think I will be buried in black combat boots.
That's your go-to.
Yep.
Um, we talked about this a little bit before the show. Do you prefer a space that has a lot of things in it already, things going for it, or would you like to start from scratch and be able to build up your set all the way and make it exactly what you want?
Um, I would say it's nice to have a blank slate just because you do have the freedom to build everything that you want without having like restrictions. Hmm. Though I do like having unique features in a spot to play off of, and it sells the
Mm,
reality. I think I haven't had the experience very often to um like fully build it from scratch, put the walls up and
mhm.
all of that. That is incredibly labor intensive. It's a lot of fun. It's really fun to be able to um period. I think the best thing to do is give yourselves the opportunity to change a lot. Um, I have 7 different kind of flooring options,
Yeah,
carpet options, being able to play with those options and then have the freedom to change the space as much as possible. That is essential, I
yeah.
think.
So what are some challenges that come from getting to have whatever you want, having that, playing from scratch where you're building it up? What are some challenges that kind of get introduced versus just being able to run a space you kind of can just start in?
The reality, 100%. I mean, it's I've seen it, based off of real places is, I think a little bit easier because you have kind of a template that you're trying to match. But when you're walking into a room and you need it to look like a hospital room, like there are those little details that sell it, like the handrails. I can't walk into a random room and just put up handrails
Mhm.
somewhere. So it's nice to find a place that already has like a detailing there that could be sold as a handrail. Or the specific kind of windows that they have. So I don't know how else to say that other than
Yeah,
like
yeah.
selling the reality of it. Like those little details really make a big difference. Like being able to get a real IV drip. Some of those things are expensive or medically not, I'm not able to get them. So,
Yeah.
um,
Well, then, because the viewer subconsciously they're really good at knowing when something is not right.
yeah.
Correct. So how do you approach it when you are in a situation where you need to sell the reality a little bit more? Are there any, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but there's specific prop places that you go to if you're like, okay, we need XYZ for a police or hospital room or something like that. There's some places that you kind of pick and choose and can find things.
I am in love with Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
You can't, you get into the difficulties of depending on the budget, like you have less return options, but you can get a lot of very unique pieces that
Mm.
are very like limited elsewhere. That's kind of a cliche, but surplus stock, I'm gonna say that again. Surplus shops have
Hmm.
a lot of discontinued, so it might be more antique
Yeah.
gear, but it still looks real. And that's at least a good place to start and get a base. Like they can't sell badges that are real badges, but you can go and see what a real badge would look like, and then that can inform how you
Oh.
recreate one yourself.
Yeah. So do you enjoy the idea of, taking inspiration from something and remaking it into your own prop or kind of fabricating your own kind of things?
I am kind of intimidated by some of the fabrication.
Mhm.
I love trying to figure it out and
Yeah.
trying my hand at it, but I work with a lot of very skilled individuals who are very good at
Right.
fabricating. So
Yeah. So for you, kind of being a lead in the art department, you found a lot of different resources. It seems like of different people that could do certain things.
yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk to me like if you have a team that you're trying to build, what does that look like if you could build out your perfect art department?
Hmm. I mean, I think it's nice to have somebody who is kind of each um area. If um I don't always have the luxury of having, 5, 6 people to
Yeah.
handle each specific area. So my dream team is usually based on the project. If we're in charge of wardrobe, if we're handling wardrobe and there's 10 people that need to be through wardrobe, then I will really lean on finding somebody who that's their specialty. They really
Gotcha.
like that. If it's one where we are making those little intricate details and we're getting super close up on the fake hand axe that we're gonna smash into somebody's head, then
Yeah.
I'm gonna lead towards somebody who can recreate weapons really well. And then if we're dressing like a huge house, then I'm gonna find somebody who's got a really good eye for solving those problems. Hanging blinds is one of the most common common infuriations. Haven't figured out a trick that successfully works for it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Could you outline for some of our listeners that may not know much about the art department, maybe, or maybe they're just content creative people that are looking to maybe get into film and they're interested in the art? What are some of the different roles that kind of come in like that team? Could you kind of outline some of those?
Yeah. So there are there's production designer. They think big picture for the whole project, often working with the camera department, the director,
Mm.
thinking of like the big broad strokes of how you want something to look. And then art directors help make it happen, help actually source things, and usually have a huge stock of stuff that they can bring out wherever they are. And set dressers are people who are setting it up, moving things day of, typically are actually on set. A lot of art department I have found works ahead of the crew and production, so I'm not actually there on set. So it's then there's a set dresser who is there to move those little touches after it's been set specifically for camera. And day of, there is sometimes it's part of art department. A lot of times in like smaller productions, wardrobe has gotten kind of, it gets looped in with art.
Okay.
That is sometimes completely not anywhere
Yeah.
near art.
If it's like a period piece, that's their own department most of the time, right?
I would say that a period piece would probably put it closer to
Okay.
because that's part of like the world building, but like on a commercial that will be with vanities and hair
Gotcha.
and makeup and that kind of stuff is typically completely separated from art unless it's a storytelling tool. Then there are props people who are typically the ones who like are fabricating small handheld props. Sometimes weapons gets put into it, or
Yeah.
like Lord of the Rings, the chainmail and that kind of stuff. But
That'd be a cool job. That'd be wild.
the fantasy, it's
Yeah.
the dream.
Yeah, the fantasy. There's a channel I follow, Nerd Forge, I think. They make the coolest stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty sweet. I digress. Continue if there's any other.
I'm trying to think. I mean, you can break it down. I mean, it depends on how big. The bigger you go, the more positions there's going to be. But
Yeah.
I think those are kind of
That's kind of the
broad
main
strokes.
ones, and then there may be extra hands within those departments.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like, if it's a food competition show, there's going to be somebody that's specifically on foods.
Mhm.
Part of that gets lopped in with art and some of it's completely separate. It's it depends
So
on production.
there's probably a lot of people in that department that don't consider themselves like filmmakers that find themselves in filmmaking. Would you say?
I think um, what I've noticed is they find their niche in filmmaking. Like they started in general production and then they find the thing that they really, really love
Yeah,
and then just lean really hard into that.
that's awesome. Yeah. All right, so I want to talk about a couple different scenarios within a project. So let's say you have all the budget in the world,
hmm
and now it's just a matter of keeping in control of that and making the right selections. What's your approach on a project where like you got plenty of money to kind of make things happen, but now it's like, what do I make happen? How do you kind of approach that?
Um, you definitely focus on um, what you're going to see the most, what is going to have the most bang for your buck, something that is like, um, if it's something that the character handles in multiple scenes, then that you can spend extra there to have that have more personality. It can tell more of a story. You can get into the fine details of it. If it's a space that we're building, then uh, I worked on a project, Tin Hill #9, that we built a whole cave because that's where the majority of the action was going to happen. We had other locations, but this cave is going to be where the huge emotional impact is going to be. So we spent weeks designing, prepping, painting, creating that from scratch so that we could control every aspect of it. And we've used that set multiple times now because it has so much detail and it's like Um, so definitely like the heavy impact moments, like
Yeah.
a space that you're gonna see or
And that's where reading the script and being a part of that, you can really have an idea of like, this is where all the money needs, or most of the money needs to go.
yeah.
For
Yep.
sure. For sure. Now on the other end of that, when you have no budget, little to no budget, um, and this might be you can give some tips for people that want to get into this role. What are some plays that you said Facebook Marketplace? What are some other things that you do to kind of try to source as many little things that might be able to make it work?
Um, hmm. I would say I kind of have a similar philosophy for big and small. If you can find those um heavy impact moments, it's easier to overlook some of the details that maybe aren't as accurate because um everything else buys in so much, I get caught saying a lot, if they notice the fact that that's not how that's supposed to be, then
Yeah.
we're not doing the rest of our job
Yeah.
properly. Um, I should go on your previous question. I think that if I have the dream budget, it is buying a lot of those little things that sell the reality or whatever scenario we're in so that we have a lot of options to play with. But yeah, besides that, when you're dealing with a small budget too, covering the basics that you have to get to sell the story, like these are absolute musts um and then go from there. But I think that process is similar, big or small budget.
Yeah, I think, and we'll talk a little bit about that Dreamsfield Greatness project you were on now for a bit. I think we talked through some of the things we needed, and then we got to set. You start working on the room, and you just had so many things that were knickknacks and just like things we never talked about. I had no idea it was coming, and it just blew my mind when everything was finally put together. What's your goal when you are trying to put together a room like that and kind of build something out that's maybe you have, an idea what you want to do, but you want to take it to the next level and really kind of add that other layer to the location?
Um my first thing is that I Google and Pinterest just whatever the catchphrase is, 12-year-old boy's room. You're going to get lots of, high fancy versions of it. And you look for the commonalities, the things that you like. And I start making a list of what I do and what I don't like, how well that sells into the world that we're trying to build.
Mm-hmm.
And then go back to my own experience of like, I was always a collector. So what are those real, like, the things that people would roll your eyes at and like, oh, only a kid would have that, or the things that you remember packing up. And I don't know, maybe I've always had an over emotional attachment to my stuff, but like when you got rid of it, you were really sad to get rid of it, or when it broke, you were, and then trying to sell that story in, somebody else's world.
And you had the mini baseball helmets that you only get when you go to the game and get Dippin' Dots.
Yeah.
And you found those for the kids' room, and it just reminded me, because when I was little, our local baseball team was the Asheville Tourist, and they always had the Dippin' Dots, and you go there and you tried to collect as many teams as you could. And that like was one of those things when I saw it, I was like, oh, wow. Like, and that's just something that you came up with and ended up bringing in there that I thought was just awesome. And it's like those little details just make everything so like immersive.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause I think that's our goal, is trying to immerse the audience. And art department, most people don't even think about that, and that stuff's happening, but you just get that emotion immediately.
Yeah.
I guess I was just kind of talking about that, but were there any other pieces within that project that you kind of, and this is the Dream Fuel of Greatness project, that you kind of were like, wow, that was pretty cool?
I mean, I have vivid memories of like, I wasn't big into sports when I was growing up, but my aunt really was, and she would take us all to all the baseball games. And so I remember the Dippin' Dots hats, and I would always keep those as mementos. And so I imagine for, just extrapolate, somebody who really loves baseball is going to have been to, dozens of games and has their little traditions. And even I would get like bobbleheads from the games that she would take us to through work. And so again, somebody would have that and like lucked out and found a place by by the Brewers Stadium. There's a Goodwill for anybody who really likes to collect bobbleheads. This Goodwill, because they're right next to the stadium, they get all of their old gear. So they've got loads of jerseys. They've got shelves and shelves of bobbleheads that so you can be selective with who you're highlighting. And I remember like sending that out into the group chat, like relying on other people's knowledge and being like, okay, from this shelf, who are our like key players that we have to have, who's and I think those who was it, Hank Aaron.
Yeah, legend. R.I.P. Hank Aaron.
And he was a Milwaukee local legend, so it was kind of perfect that he also happened to be there. So
absolutely. We're going to talk a little bit, because we actually had this conversation on set, and you were telling me about all the other things you like to do within filmmaking, like not just art department, but you enjoy other parts. Can you talk through some of those things and that you want to maybe continue to add to your bag and do more?
I do like to work behind the camera. It's been a while. I do have my own setup, more photography style, more like run and gun, or like kind of vlog style. And I like playing around with that and would love to do that more. Probably a lot of B-roll. A lot of people will look through my roll and be like, is that stock footage? I'm like, it could be. It should be. I really like, this kind of ties into the fact that I was, doing art is very similar to producing, in that I have to know a lot of the logistics. So getting in and solving problems, I always am, when I'm on set listening to what other people are struggling with and a problem that they're having and trying to find a solution. And so being able to have more control over that, or producing. And I really like storyboarding, but I don't think that that's like, I think somebody else is supposed to do that. But
I
Lord
feel
of the
like,
Rings, they had a storyboard artist.
yeah, that's true. I'm sure that level they definitely have somebody that's doing that only. There was so much logistics to the art department stuff that I didn't realize. So that I felt like you wanting to produce and stuff makes a lot of sense because that's kind of down that same alleyway, finding things, sourcing them. We didn't really talk about how you work with returning some props and different things too, and how important that can be. Because I figured once we buy it, you buy it, and wherever it goes, you spent it, and that's it. But tell us that process a little bit and the logistics of buying and returning things, and I think that's really important. It saves a lot of budget at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think that's also part of my fascination with getting into the producing side of things is I want to know where the money is and where it's going, because I think art is unique in that you can get a lot of money back, depending, obviously, like you don't want to return anything that's used, anything that gets worn. Food, you're kind of stuck with a lot of some things you don't have as much leeway, but at least I have I like to play and I like to have options.
Yeah.
So I am comfortable in some cases, and it has been recommended in any number of ways that I should not do that, because you are taking on risk when you buy, you know, you are buying things that you are essentially using and then returning.
Yeah.
And so that kind of that can put limits on, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Collect thoughts about that. I will buy things that I know are not going to get heavily used. They're just kind of as a backup option.
Yeah.
That doesn't have to be a particularly special item if it doesn't have to have a lot of character. Because that can let you fill the world while not having to keep that. And also because I move so much that finding places to store it, it's nice to be able to
have like that makes a lot of sense. Do you ever look at like having multiple options, but like let's say we don't use that option, it's like, okay, well that can get returned kind of thing too?
Yeah. Definitely. I always say I like to have too many options versus not enough options.
Yeah.
So I will source from as many people as I can, people that I know in the area, prop houses, people on set. I throw out, that's part of making the mood board, is that I can send that to the crew on something that's an especially low budget and say, this is what we're looking for. Please send me pictures if you have it. And then if I get 7 responses, then I'm like, awesome. Everybody bring those. If anything, we can throw it in the background as texture to sell. A little kid's room is not going to be clean. You're going to want like clutter here and there. And, that
was something because you built out the room and it felt too built out, and then we're like, how do we make it like a 12-year-old just came in here and mom's mad because you haven't cleaned up? And I think that was something real cool. It was a cool note you gave, like, we got to dirty this up a little bit.
Yeah. Yep. And then you have to like balance that out without not making tripping hazards for crew, something that can be reset. Like if they're throwing down a pile of papers, I'll tape like 7 of the papers together so that the top group always looks the same, and you can kind of still cut to it between takes.
It's a great tip.
Yeah.
Great tip. You should cut that out for real. So something I want to ask, what is if you can get your number one project that you want to accomplish in your life, that you want to be the head of art, production designer for. What does that project look like?
I think I have a couple dream projects. One has already been done twice, poorly. Both got canceled and terrible reviews, and I'm not going to throw them under the bus. I love the attempt, and I will always love to see variations of it out there, but that is like the ownership of it has changed hands a couple times, and I just watch who currently owns the property to see when that will be a possibility. I like melding reality and fantasy so that you can like Twilight, I think is a great example of it's got its fantasy side of things, but then it also is very based in the human world so that it feels grounded and it feels possible. I like tricking people like so real that you don't think that it's fake, like Lord of the Rings. That just is its own world. Game of Thrones
somewhere else.
Game of Thrones, they even tell the story through somebody's hair or a belt that they're wearing. I think that is really something that the art is kind of the focus, is always a dream, obviously.
Like the House of Dragons, those seasons, man, they went crazy with the production, and there's a lot of cool documentaries on HBO, I think, about how they did each episode, and they really dive into that side of it, the art side of it, and that's always really cool to see. Cool to see.
There's a niche on YouTube of historical dress makers that they will like talk about the stitches on somebody's shoulder, like you can tell that's handmade versus not handmade, and
that's how you know who has money and who doesn't, kind of thing back then, huh?
Or even like, I mean, Game of Thrones had a lot of money, but the fact that they also have hundreds of people that they have to dress, so the fact that they still pay that much attention to the little details is something that you can just tell that was very lovingly, and like they had a lot of conversations that is they're using it as a storytelling element versus like renting out 100 background wardrobe that's like not time appropriate, not era appropriate, and
just filling it in because we got to do it.
Or there's lots of examples of mohawks in like medieval times and leather jackets that wouldn't have existed back then. And it's like, it's fun. I like to play with fantasy, so that's why I like kind of a mix of the two, not like super strict on the rules, so that you can still play and have fun with those fantasy elements.
That's good stuff. Before we get out of here, what are some hopes and things that you want to see from our filmmaking community here in Milwaukee to continue to grow, and some of the people you've dealt with? Like, what's your hopes to see this place?
I definitely want to see collect thoughts. That's a big. I definitely want to see it continue to grow. There's a lot of talent that's here that people kind of come in and they don't expect and then are surprised, and I would like that surprise to be less, or they feel like they have to bring in a lot of people versus finding the talent that is in the Milwaukee area, and highlighting that versus osmosis or bringing it in, and appreciating Milwaukee for what it is and not always the cliches. There's a lot of stories. It's a big city. It's a very diverse city that I think don't always get told in the area. It's like rural Wisconsin. We're always, the good old, like, down to earth. We've still got areas of that in Milwaukee, or in Wisconsin, but there's lots of other stories to explore too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for coming out and hopping on the podcast with us. This was it was cool to talk about something that a little bit different than our normal conversations. You know, a lot of camera conversations here, but this has been a great time. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So no matter where you watch or you listen to this podcast, please do us a favor and like, subscribe, comment, maybe share your favorite prop that you want to make one day down below in the comments. But thank you for watching or listening. And until next time, we'll see you. Peace.